All right, Alexis, tell us why Long Time Gone is the standout track for you from this album.
Um, well, a couple of reasons. I think let's see. Well, between the three, Crosby, Stills, and Nash, I think I've always kind of gravitated towards Crosby's songs a little bit more, as well as Stills. It's like Nash had like the more like poppy,
Hmm.
uh, you know, hook hook radio friendly type of stuff. Stills had more of like the rock and bluesy stuff, and I liked his songwriting and I liked his voice more. And then if I think of all three of them, I always kind of liked and preferred Crosby's songs and his voice because they create more of like a mood, right? They're a little bit more moody. They create a little bit more like a mystical feeling around them.
Yeah.
So I like the vibe that it creates, and I think obviously this is one of the more political commentary tracks on the album. I
Yeah.
think like that and like Wooden Ships, which actually I love Wooden Ships, and I would have
Wooden Ships
originally
is
wanted to
great.
have that as my standout track, but then I realized it was about like post-nuclear apocalypse, and I was like,
Yeah.
maybe we don't go down that route on
Right.
Saturday afternoon. Um, but I think there's a lot of sort of similarities between both of those tracks. But I love how the feeling of the music sort of underscores what like the poetry of the lyrics is talking about. Like you can
Mm.
feel there's like something is simmering or bubbling, under the surface with like the organ that's playing and just sort of the oral quality that Crosby and the group has kind of created. I love that feeling of like there's tension sort of bubbling under the surface. But you can hear like in his voice a little bit more of, the passion of, about what he's feeling, his frustration is. Um,
Yeah.
I believe I believe David Crosby wrote this the night that Bobby Kennedy was killed.
Oh, okay.
That
Yeah.
tracks.
Yeah. And he was
Yeah.
already, kind of worked up about, JFK being shot. I feel like kind of there was, like, a concert when he was with, like, the Birds that he was speaking out, sort of a commentary, and that his sort of frustration and perspective on it, I think, was part of one of the factors that got him kicked out of the Birds.
Sounds like it.
Maybe
Yeah.
I think him just kind of being a jerk in general. Um, but but I think, it kinda came from, like and I think he said he wrote it in, like, 15 or 20 minutes, like, it just was this
Hmm.
sort of, like, outpouring in this moment of just, like, what's going on? And that, like, kind of amidst, societal, cultural change and political upheaval, I feel like, there's some parallels that we can see made to today that kind of can kind of relate a little bit. I feel like there's sometimes a lot of like the hippie ethos from the late 60s, like it's kind of cheesy and kind of sappy sometimes, but I think in certain moments some of those ideals either should still ring true, or maybe we kind of need to lean into them a little bit more sometimes that,
Yeah.
love is better than hatred and, peace is better than war and, we take care of each other and take care of the environment. This has happened before. We've been in tough situations before and like we've mentioned before in our conversations, like music always is kind of an outlet and reflective of the times.
Yeah.
Uh, there's this one, I don't know, it's probably a quote I found, like, Instagram or something, but, it I like how it applied to here where it was about, like, when you go to a museum, you're not just, like, looking at art, but you're, like, walking through centuries of people trying to figure out how to express love and grief and belonging and beauty, and I feel like this album and this song in particular, kind of reflects that to me a little bit, like, you're kind of seeing how he's figuring out how to express his frustration and anger, and just sort of feelings amongst a politically charged time. And I think that can resonate these days. On top of just being a really, really awesome song. I think it just sounds great. It has an important meaning, and I think that's kind of where it landed, and it was
Yeah.
the post-nuclear song. So
But
Well,
we would have
that's
talked about that one too, you know.
yeah.
yeah. I think I want to touch on what you said about the kind of late 60s hippie energy and aesthetic maybe feeling cheesy in some ways. I actually don't think that that's the fault of so much the participants in that themselves, so much that not like anybody's under any delusions that we're a really pro-capitalist podcast or anything like that, but I kind of feel like that's more the effect of kind of that whole energy and that whole kind of point of view being commodified in some ways that's flattened it.
Mhm.
And in the ensuing decades, we sort of look at that was like, well, did the hippies really do anything, or were they just, was there any appreciable outcome to the free love and all of that? And I think that kind of, when you look at the album on its own terms and you don't look at it as just sort of like a frivolous kind of folk free love lazy hippie kind of thing, when you're looking at it on its own terms of saying like, no, like love is actually a legitimate strategy and a legitimate critique for a lot of the systems that we have had to participate in, a lot of systems that we need to be critical of, makes perfect sense why this is stuck around so long and why these songs, even though they feel like they kind of feel like old head songs now, they still strike us. There's something about the kind of music that dads listen to, that this is very dad-esque music, that it doesn't feel um untrue. Like it doesn't feel like it's frivolous. It feels like it has something that's underneath the kind of stereotypical idea of what hippies and Laurel Canyon were.
Does
Yeah.
does this song, Alexis, do you find this song reassuring? 'Cause I remember when we talked to you about Kate Bush, cloud busting,
Mm.
like, was something that I think you cited as being, like, the lyrics and the music, like, there was something about it that felt reassuring or inspiring or comforting, or, insert whatever
Hopeful.
adjective you needed at the
Yeah.
time.
Yeah,
Like,
dance
do
it out.
you yeah, do
Dance it out.
do you get this
Right.
do you get the same sort of, does this song have that same sort of effect, or does this one stand out to you for a different reason?
That's a good question. Um, but maybe a little bit of both, actually. I mean, I feel like, um, so with particular to cloud busting, that was, yeah, it was expressive. It's like, you know what, I was dancing it out in my kitchen at like midnight in the midst of like COVID, and just kind of offered a little bit of, levity and just, yeah, connection, that of like uh, this kind of feeling, this type of emotion, like when something good gonna happen.
Mhm.
Um, it makes you feel like connected to something, that's like, I'm not the only one that's feeling this. We're not the only ones that are feeling this. There is sort of a connectivity to that. Um, if I am like, I've also probably, to the point of like, how are you, interacting with music differently? I find I'm car singing a little bit more now,
Are
like
you?
windows
Yeah.
up. Like, I'm not a good singer, and I think, I can help, but
I
I
don't
think
believe it.
that part of like having this three-part harmony, I do feel like it actually kind of allows people without the best ear to be able, like, entry points,
Mm.
people sitting along a little bit
Mhm.
better. So I think, Michael, to your question, I kind of been like, I've been car singing to this album, of just kind of like letting like express, letting it go. Like, sometimes you got to dance it out, you got to sing it out.
Mm.
I don't know what to do with yourself sometimes when the news is a lot, or just things feel heavy.
Mhm.
This album was a response to like the heaviness of like the Vietnam War.
Yeah.
Uh, that, yeah, I think, yeah, but I have been listening to it. I haven't been listening to it a whole lot on my own of late. I have introduced it to, oh gosh, this might be a tangent, so let me know if we're running
Do
into
it.
it. Um, but it was on, various, playlists and things like that, and I listened to like the vinyl of it. But every Monday I spend about 5 hours with a group of like older women, elders of sorts, in like in a weaving studio.
Mm.
Really?
Knitters. Yeah, yeah. It's been something I picked up like 5, 6 years ago. I've always been into
Really?
like fiber arts. I've been a knitter and stuff like that. But I have been learning how to weave on a floor loom, from this group of older women who have been weaving together on Monday mornings since the late 60s.
Shut
Uh,
up. That is
yeah,
amazing.
it's really cool, and it's like, it's been a wonderful way to kind of start like the work week. Like, I don't work on Monday mornings. I go with there's probably about 10 to 12 ladies, um, that we spend 5 or 6 hours together in a weaving studio, kind of all doing our different projects. Um, and it's funny. Like, when I first started, I'm in my mid 40s, and it's one woman, Jill, started talking with me, and she's like, thank God you're here. Up until you got here, I was the youngest one. And Jill's 74.
Yes.
Well, I feel very grateful and very lucky that this group of women who have been creating, art together. I mean, it's basically you're making like fabric, you're making cloth and different like patterns
Yeah.
and stuff like that. But they've been doing this on a weekly basis for 60 years. And I know I'm so grateful and honored to have been kind of allowed into this group a little bit.
Yeah.
I feel very, very privileged in the fact that they be able to spend time with these women and, a lot of crafts and particularly weaving in general. It's really passed down, from like person to person, a lot of the tips. I mean, you can read stuff, you can, look at YouTube videos and crap like that. But really, I mean, the progression of as an art form, the sustainability as art forms, it's essentially has not changed for literally thousands of years,
Right. Yeah.
is from person to person and primarily from women to women down the generation. So I feel very lucky to have been able to like found my way into this group of ladies.
That's so cool.
And so it's really lovely. It's really
Yeah.
wonderful. Um, but so what's funny is, a whole bunch of like older Wisconsin women, there's a lot of chatter, right?
Yeah.
And so
There
and
better be.
oh
Otherwise,
yeah,
what are we doing it for?
exactly. And it's a blessing and a curse because it's so funny, but it's also kind of a little bit too much of a hen house that me and Jill, the second youngest one, um, and we're like we're not getting like any weaving done because these ladies just keep chatting, and it's wonderful. Like it's wonderful. There's it's not not bad, but at the same time, like we're here for 5 hours and kind of nothing to show for it other than just like chatting.
Right.
So we started to like maybe because weaving can be very rhythmic based and you kind of want to get into a little bit of a rhythm anyways. And so we're like, how about we start playing some music in the studio to see like if we can, it just tampers down some of the
Yes.
chattiness. And we tried a couple and we tried a couple things and it's a wide variety of women, different perspectives, different opinions,
Good.
different which is wonderful, which is
Yeah.
why I love it so very much. Um, but we couldn't like land on anything of like that was all of the ladies would
Hmm.
agree to. I put this album on and it instantly transformed at least for that day and for, a little bit more after that, um, how we worked. And I think because these women had been meeting together as a group since basically this album came out,
Yeah.
like it allowed them to kind of like tap in. I don't know. It changed women's just sort of energy and suddenly like these memories started coming up and it provided a platform for us to kind of talk about like what's going on now, their memories from then. It's really kind of allowed for a platform for a lot of really beautiful intergenerational sort of discussion and connection
Mm.
that I wasn't anticipating. And it was funny after this one was so successful, I was like, well, maybe I'll keep going on the CSNY track. And once I got a live album in there, these ladies were like, nope, too much.
Sure.
This is too much.
Yeah.
But sort of like the sort of feeling and energy of this one, it brought him back. I mean, there's one woman, gosh, she has to be in her early 80s, lovely, and, like, as we've been weaving together, like, her and her husband moved into, a assisted living facility,
Mm.
and then her husband passed away,
Mm.
and most recently, too, she's also kinda given up her car. She's also, I also feel
Wow.
very privileged to be, like, husbands have been lost, children have been, lost. There's a lot of life changes that to be witness to these women going through these, large life changes is really important and special to be able to have that, to
Yeah.
be allowed into this group. But it's funny, she's always been, has very long white silver hair. It's always up in a bun, always, under a cap, and she's just, kind of works away. And this album came on, and by the end of it, like her hair was down. She was just like
Yeah.
tapped into, like, a kind of a place that I think, um, maybe they haven't been at in a long time, and it just
Hmm.
really it was a nice way to kind of bring a different energy to the studio and also kind of allowed, connectivity in different ways that we hadn't necessarily. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, it's kinda cool.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
Hmm.
That's incredible. Okay, so if we're talking about kind of like the merits of this album in
Mm,
particular, I kind of feel like what I hear you sort of expressing through this effect that it had on this group is that there's something really accessible about this album, whether it's, and I think it's probably like a combination of things, probably the production quality and the kind of clarity that the songs come through, and that in addition to the actual musicality of it itself. But like, how does this kind of fit your vision of what a perfect album is accessibility and what the effect that it just had on this group of people? Is that kind of one of the things that you believe makes it perfect? What else contributes to that?
Well, I think in this particular case, I do think that one of the components that makes this perfect. And I think because it's been ever present in a lot of people's libraries for a lot, for a long time, that I feel like almost anybody can kind of go back to. It's like, oh yeah, like there's some memory of this album for, I think, for a lot of people, particularly because of the dad quotient.
Yeah,
Uh,
the
for
DQ.
sure. Yeah. So I think everyone has some sort of familiarity with it at some point in their life, and sometimes if you hear it again, it kind of takes you back to whatever that time or era was.
Yeah.
My standards last time, was that I wanted the album to feel like a complete meal, like a
Mm.
really satisfactory complete meal. And I'm gonna say this worked within that rubric, I guess. One of the things that, for any perfect dish, right, you have to have like the balance of like salt, acid, fat, and heat, right?
Thank you, Samin Nosrat. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. But I think, like, to me, that's kind of what came to me about this album is you got, 4 different artists with, they can all sing, they can all harmonize, they can all play, they can all write, but are different and bring in different qualities, and you have a balanced mixture of all of that kind of thrown into the album,
Yeah.
that it is able to have all these kind of different influences, a different wider palette, so to
Mm.
speak, that to me, yeah, I think it does work within the, perfect meal
Yeah.
production, um standards that I think I applied to the last album. I don't
Nutritious. It's
nutrition?
nutritious. It
Yes.
feels like it not only is it nutritious, but it's also delicious. Like I feel like it's not health food in that
Mhm.
way. I feel like maybe that is a issue with classical music. Sometimes is that it's nutritious, but it's not necessarily always delicious. Right. So
So
like figuring out how to make classical music is delicious, they need to take some notes from folk rock. Right. Like folk rock has managed to do that. Laurel Canyon in particular has managed to create songs that feel genuinely like musically genius while also being accessible on a pop level.
yeah.
I think it's a rare quality that all musicians seem, like a certain percentage of musicians are probably striving for, right?
You
Yeah.
mentioning this as your standard, it does feel like now I understand why you would choose this album over Deja Vu because
Mhm.
it does sort of feel like this album it's well baked, like it's
Mhm.
all
Got a good
it's
bake on it.
or it's like a stew that's been allowed to sit, on the stovetop for an extra hour so all the flavors could meld together.
Yep.
Whereas Deja Vu does sort of feel like you've gone to the fancy restaurant where they have the like various courses and they don't all quite go together because they're still sort of figuring it out. Like,
Hmm.
and some of them are really good and really memorable, but others are kind of like, whatever. Whereas this does feel like it's all come together, all the flavors have blended.
Yeah. I'm gonna say it's farm to table California cuisine.
Mm,
Yes,
there
it's
we go.
exactly what it is. Yes. Okay, here's a take. I would love to hear your two responses to this. Does the extent to which you feel like the artist or band is trying too hard affect an album's perfection? The try hard factor, one might say.
Yeah. I mean, I guess it depends whether that try is feel successful or not. I don't know. I mean,
I'll give you an example.
okay, great.
Um, I saw both Marty Supreme and
Mhm.
Sinners, right?
Okay.
And both Michael B. Jordan and Timothy Chalamet they're very excellent actors. Like kind of any way you slice it, they both hold the screen. They both have movie star quality in some ways.
Mhm.
But there is always this there's always this kind of award season thing of the person who feels like they're trying really hard for that best actor nomination and that best actor win, right?
Mhm.
And so like as much as I appreciated Marty Supreme and as much as I appreciated Timothy Chalamet's performance in that and in the tapestry of that film, which I think the film was really well done, it makes sense to me why Michael B. Jordan gets the Oscar in that situation, because I felt like he was able to live within that film in a way that didn't feel as effortful
Mhm.
as Timothy in Marty Supreme. You know, and that's even leaving
Okay.
to the side all the other stuff that's happened in the discourse since then
Mhm.
about Timothy and his whole celebrity. I wonder in this specific situation if we feel like CSN, they weren't trying as hard on this album as maybe they were on Deja Vu once they added Neil Young
Mhm.
to the mix, and if that affects its level of perfection.
I mean, I think I respond and enjoy when there's a level of authenticity to it.
Yeah,
Um, and back to sort of your Chalamet and like Sinners, Michael B. Jordan comparison. I think again as like a uh audience member, someone that's consuming whatever their art form is. Like I certainly responded. I actually did not see Marty Supreme because I'm not a fan of Chalamet.
fair enough.
Um,
Yeah,
particularly someone who's worked in dance and opera and
yeah,
theater,
yeah,
but
yeah.
Mhm.
hmm, um,
Exactly what I was referencing.
yeah,
Yeah,
it was picking up what you were putting down there.
yeah,
Yeah, but I think kind of to your point between those albums, like I feel like there is like such an authenticity component here that you can feel like I don't feel like they're trying too hard. I feel like I kind of feel like you're just kind of sitting in as like a fly on the wall of like one of their jam sessions at like Joni Mitchell's house or like Mama Cass's house, which is
hmm,
actually how they started. Like that's how
right.
they formed together, right?
Incredible. Yeah,
Which is yeah. Um, but so I think that to me comes across in the album, and that is sort of just the vibe that kind of comes along with it for me, and that
hmm,
feels authentic. And I do feel like Deja Vu. It's like they kind of had set the bar. This came out um what in like May of 69. I think it was
Mhm.
it went 4 times platinum. It was
right.
a huge, huge hit. I mean, they went to Woodstock as like their second show. So I think, the bar was set pretty high, and then as we all know, like the sophomore follow-up album, you have expectations, you have pressures, you've got like whatever pressure from like the record label, from, various forces to, follow that up. And while it was, I think, the album itself was also very successful, to like what extent and to like what detriment, of kind of like them eventually kind of falling apart
Yeah,
before they create other iterations. But I
right.
think there's a lot of authenticity in this album to me, that I think I really react to and respond to and enjoy.
It lands. Yeah.
And
Mhm.
yeah.
What about
Yeah.
you, Michael, on the try hard quotient thing? Where does that land for you?
Deja Vu doesn't strike me as a try-hard album. I mean, when I think of a try-hard musical artist, I think about something like, I don't know, like My Chemical Romance, Welcome to the Black Parade or something like that. Like
Right.
because I feel like a lot of emo bands were
Mhm.
trying real hard to share their emotions and
Yeah.
wrap it up in some sort of, little bow, or, a torn black bow with glossy black paint on it or something. I don't know.
Exactly.
I, I
Yeah.
don't know. I mean, I know when people feel like they're trying harder, when they're going at it for fame or for glory or ego. It's a huge turnoff for me. And
Hmm.
the crazy thing is, I mean, I feel like these three guys probably do have some sizable egos, and Neil Young too. I mean, love him, but also I think he's
Yeah.
rather rather large ego. But like, it doesn't sound like it makes its way into the music. If anything, I hear Steven Stills getting really mad that everyone won't come together. Like, if I was thinking about
Yeah.
this while I was listening to the album today, if I do identify with one of them, it would be Steven Stills, because he's the one who, like, I think has the most musical know-how. He's the one who felt like he was like, "Come on, we have to let's get the arrangements down. Let's make this all happen." And yes, he probably had an ego too, but I don't know. That's the only thing that I maybe hear in
Yeah.
Deja Vu that I don't hear in this first album, which is Steven Stills trying desperately to hold it all together. Um,
I say this as a certified tryhard too, by the way. I'm not saying that this isn't me. I'm saying like I think as somebody who is a try who has and is still trying to weave a creative element to my life into, maybe let's take the word career off to the side, right? But like trying to allow a channel for my creativity over the course of my adult life, that I'm like, well, should it feel, like how do you strive for something without it feeling like you so badly want it to succeed that you strangle the thing, right? Like
Mhm.
that you can let it exist on its own terms, and we can kind of sense it. It's that one thing that you just kind of feel it in your body when it happens. So I don't know. It's something, I think it's an ongoing question, and I think there's plenty of artists who are brilliant case studies of this. And I'm just Kanye West was going through my head just a second ago
Mhm.
because I feel like there's the arc, because now we're in the now he's medicated again, right? And he's
Mm.
apologizing for things. And
Oh,
so
really?
like,
Mm.
yeah, and so you're like, well, okay, what does this mean for your arc? Right? And like, uh what does this mean for what you make now? Right? Like
Mm.
Mhm.
what heart is it done with? It makes me think of my great grandfather used to say, you have to do things with a good heart, right? You have to do it with good intentions for it
Mhm.
to, intention matters,
Mhm.
impact does. But I don't know, there's something there. Before we go to the deliberation phase, I need to call out one thing from Deja Vu, which is the song that Michael put from on a breakup mixtape for me. This is one of the most impactful mixtapes I've ever received, and Michael made it for me after a particularly difficult breakup. And Carry On from Deja Vu was on that. And
Didn't I
you
open the whole thing with Carry
you
On?
you did
Like right out of the gate, like, "All right, let's do."
you did. And I think you said that you've been singing a lot when
Mhm.
listening to music, Alexis. I've been crying a lot when listening to music recently. Like the emotional bandwidth of this band is right there on the surface. Like
Mhm.
it's not hidden. The emotions are right there.
Yeah.
And when I hear, I get goosebumps when I listen to that song because of the way in which it was presented to me. And that was on a mixtape that included all the other Michael Osinski kind of hallmark Pearl Jam and other really angry stuff. And just Sia was on that playlist too. So other really
Mhm.
emotional albums. But this kind of music has that emotion simmering right below the surface, which I think maybe you could think, well, it's kind of soft. It doesn't have like impact. But I think
Mm-mm.
that would be a misread on this band. I think their emotions are right there.
Mhm.
Thank you for sharing, and I love that, and
Had
I
to call
think,
it out.
that kind of points to, like, yeah, the power of music and, all that type of stuff, but two notes to that, if I may.
Go.
Um,
Yeah, yeah.
I think part of why CSN, when they came out initially, is coming out of, like, the psychedelic era, and was really kind of transitioning into more of, like, the blend of folk and rock together, because nobody had really done that. There was folk, there was rock. They're kind of
Hmm.
the first fusion. They're coming out of, like, psychedelic music where it was kind of like, I don't know, up in the clouds, see
It literally in
kind of.
space
Yeah,
sometimes. Yeah.
yeah, and this in particular, this album kinda really brought it back to, like, kind of like the reflective, like, human experience,
Yeah.
uh, human emotions. Because I mean, so many of the songs on this album are actually breakup songs.
Yeah.
Like Sweet Judy Blue Eyes that Stills wrote for, his breakup with Judy Collins,
Mm.
was trying to, like, basically get her back with this sweet, this, like,
Yeah.
song that, like, blossoms over the course of, like, 4 different sections, and she heard it and was like, "That's a really nice song, Steven, but I'm not coming back to you."
Yeah.
And then I think "Helplessly Hoping" was also written about, their breakup as well, so I think there's also kind of built into their music here, they were all kind of in different forms of breakup, get together, trading partners,
Yeah.
all that type of thing, and then by the time we got to Deja Vu, like, all those relationships had ended. And Crosby's wife had died at that point, like,
Yeah.
there's something. It's kind of bringing it back that this was kind of, like, the first time that they were bringing in, like, more, yeah, human reflection of, like, what's going on in our lives, what is kind of consuming our emotions, brains, and hearts right now, and they poured that into it, and I think that's why it can be so, there's a lot of connective tissue there, right?
Well
For
said.
when you're in situations that you need to kind of reflect on, like, what you're feeling, what you've got going on. I think it's a good place.
Yeah, you got me with that one, buddy. That one was right there.
Well, Alexis, we could keep talking forever about
Many
this
hours.
band,
Yeah.
and not just about this band, with other things we could talk with you about.
Yeah.
But I do believe, Tyler, that now we must move on to the
Dun dun. Deliberation
deliberation
phase.
phase, where we'll consider your case and see if you are lucky enough to have 2 albums in the pantheon.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
ooh.
You want to start, Michael?
Yeah, I'll go first because I don't need that much time, frankly, because I think that when you told the story about how you played this album for that community of women that you work with, I mean, I don't think I've ever heard such a beautiful story about like the power of music, about putting on an album and having it just like, I mean, yeah, of course I understand the power of music to change a mood, to change a room, to bring people together, but like it was just so specific, and I can just I can imagine what they all look like in that room and the moment that it happened, and it
Yeah.
just, I mean, you can't ask for anything more for an album to do. So that, I mean,
Mhm.
that story, that's all I need to reference again. How about you, Tyler?
And the woman letting her hair down. What was her name? Who was letting
Georgianne.
Georgianne?
Okay.
Georgianne letting her hair down. Come on, that's literally like there's so much poetry in that. Yeah, this is this album is timeless. You know, we bring that word up a lot, and I think that it applies perfectly to this one because they almost feel like nursery rhymes. They almost feel like kind of foundational Canterbury Tales,
Mhm.
sort of elemental kind of songs that children can listen to, that family you can listen to with your kids, with your grandparents. The accessibility of it is just very, very powerful. And it kind of fits. It kind of fits this time in which we're in a time of political upheaval, like we kind of always are, but this time is important for us to say that out loud because it is a time of people gaining more awareness, right? Which was kind of the air, the feeling in the air in the late 60s as well as we have been told. But I think songs like this that are accessible, that are beautiful, that have great artistry, have virtuosic instrumentation and performance. That if you can bury a sense of, like a hope for a different world, a hope for love to overcome in a time of hate, then I think an album like that is never going to go out of style. And so this follows in that tradition just perfectly. So I'm pretty well convinced too. You have great taste, as is very clear. But Michael, why don't you put it to me? I think I can make this assertion. I'm just gonna let my hair down real quick.
Okay. Yeah, please do. Please
Just
do.
yeah, just
Yes.
put it to me. What do you think?
Well, Tyler, I mean, you've heard Alexis's case. You've listened to the album. You've done a bit of your own research.
Hmm.
What do you think? Do you think, does Alexis get to add a second album to the pantheon? Does Crosby, Stills and Nash's Crosby, Stills and Nash go to 11? Can it join the pantheon? Is it a perfect album? What do you say?
It absolutely is. Yes.
Excellent.
Welcome.
Excellent.
We can welcome those cats to the pantheon. Well done, Alexis. Another
Oh,
sterling case.
oh, well, thank you. It's always so fun to chat with you guys, and it gives you reason to kind of really dive into music that you've had over decades of your life that you may not
Yeah.
always touch base with. But I for both albums I've had the wonderful privilege and opportunity to chat with you two about. It's been really fun to kind of really dive back into an album that has always kind of been there and just really start to kind of sit with it in a different way and
Good.
been really great. So thank you.
This is what we want. See, come on, this one goes to 11 and we'll give you a chance. We'll give you permission to deep dive on something you love. That's a great argument for taking the time to come on our podcast.
Fantastic.
Just occurred to me, Tyler, we haven't identified an album that we each would nominate that came out before we were born. We haven't even talked about that. It was almost the end of the season. We haven't talked about that yet.
Hello.
Yeah, that we need to do that. There's plenty that I've been thinking
bonus
of.
episode, perhaps.
Bonus episode fodder. Alexis, you and Veronica live in your beautiful life, doing weaving, making cheese, doing all sorts of beautiful things up there. We want to hear about what you want our listeners to know about besides Crosby, Stills, and Nash. This is your opportunity to plug
Yeah.
something. It can be something that you've been working on, something that you just want people to know about, to read, listen to, or watch.
Hmm.
What comes to mind? What comes to
Oh
mind
gosh.
with that brief?
I don't really have anything to plug right now, to be honest. Like specifically in a traditional way.
Yeah.
As always, I think particularly now, it's like be present with friends, spend time doing the things that you love, eat the food that you love. I think there's a lot of stress coming from a lot of different directions these days, and I think it's just really important to like maintain, community, maintain conversations, maintain time that really soothes your soul in some sort of way, whether that's time with friends on a Zoom and podcast chat, people in real life, time with music. That's what I'm gonna push. Good food, good music, good people. Um, that
I love
that's
this plug.
something,
This is a
right?
great plug. What more could you ask for?
And in the good food, put in some Blakesville cheese in there, and we'll see what that's a
Yes.
win.
We'll go ahead and put a link to Blakesville Creamery
Oh,
for this episode, just in case anyone doesn't know. Buy their cheese. Buy their cheese, and you won't regret it. Such a treat to have you back on. You're the best. For next time I'm up in Milwaukee, you can bet I'll be knocking on your door.
I really hope
Uh,
so. I really hope so.
yeah. Hope we get to cross
Amanda.
paths sometime soon. Uh, this is, in just the spirit of what Alexis was saying, I think I'm grateful. I'll express some more gratitude for the opportunity to slow down and talk to our friends in an intentional way. That's the best thing about doing this. Thanks for listening to our podcast for 10 full seasons. We're having a good time doing it. Are you still having a good time doing it, Michael?
I am indeed.
Yeah.
And we only got one more episode left this season, so make sure you check that out. It's a big one.
It is a big one.
And follow us on social media, do all those things. But
Yeah.
I think now, Tyler, the only thing left to say is
Bye. Bye.